Martin Short, one of the most versatile comedians in North America, has spent more than half a century conquering every stage from Canada to Hollywood. His name is closely tied to SCTV, where he created classic characters like Ed Grimley and Jackie Rogers, making audiences unable to forget his strange smile and unique expressions. Martin continued to affirm his talent through Saturday Night Live, where he turned short sketches into hilarious moments full of his own distinctive style, contributing to the legendary status of the show. On Broadway, he shone in complex roles, proving himself a multifaceted artist, and won the prestigious Tony Award, making his mark with the ability to act and sing while blending comedy with deep character portrayal. Not stopping at the stage, Martin also left his imprint in film with movies like Three Amigos, Inner Space, and especially Only Murders in the Building, where he proved his ability to maintain screen presence even when he was well into his 70s. The Emmy Awards, Tony nominations, and honors in the arts industry are testament to the brilliant career he built with talent, effort, and endless passion. But behind that spotlight is a life not without tragedy. Martin Short's childhood was marked by repeated losses. His mother passed away when he was just 12 years old, his brother died young, and his father left when he was 20. These losses left a profound void, a loneliness that no words could comfort. Nevertheless, he did not surrender to fate. Martin found his only refuge in art and the stage, turning pain into creative energy. Every time he stepped onto the stage, he brought with him all that pain, loneliness, and loss, transforming them into laughter and emotions that moved the audience. That resilient will helped him overcome failures, criticism, and the painful milestones in life, becoming living proof that pain does not kill a person, but can forge talent and an indomitable spirit. Before continuing, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. It is a small but meaningful way to honor the resilient journey of Martin Short, who has turned pain into laughter for the whole world. Martin Short grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, an industrial city where the noise of factories and the busy pace of life formed the foundation for a difficult childhood. From the very first days, his life was not whole. His mother passed away when he was just 12 years old, leaving a void that no words could fill, and the feeling of being left alone in the vast world that the little boy had not yet had time to understand. Not stopping there, tragedy continued to haunt him when his brother passed away too soon, and his father died when he had just passed 20, forcing Martin to face the harsh reality that the people he loved most, the spiritual pillars he had once relied on, were no longer by his side. These losses were not just immediate pain, but also created a deep scar in his soul, an emotional void that every passing day reminded Martin of the fragility of family bonds and the loneliness that had followed him from very early on. In that situation, Martin found something that saved him from loneliness. That was music and the stage. The songs playing from the radio, the small comedy performances at fairs, or simply imitating the characters he saw on television became the means for him to escape from a reality full of loss. When laughter echoed in the empty room, Martin felt a spiritual connection, a moment of comfort, however brief, but enough to ignite hope in the heart of a deeply wounded boy. Every melody, every line, every humorous gesture became a bridge to the world, where loneliness and loss seemed to be lessened a little, where the boy could feel he still existed, that he could still make an impact, even if only in fleeting moments. It was precisely in those quiet moments, full of solitude, that Martin began to nurture his dream of the stage, not just for fame or recognition, but because it was the way to survive, the way to fight against the silent loneliness he carried throughout his childhood. He practiced, observed, memorized, and imitated everything he saw that could create laughter or surprise. Step by step, he realized that art was not just a profession, but also a shield for the spirit, a place where painful emotions could be turned into living energy. Even as a little boy, Martin understood that every laugh he brought to others was medicine that healed himself, that performing was not just a way to be seen, but a way to exist amid losses that could not be put into words. The loneliness and lack from family also taught him a lesson about self-reliance and resilience. Martin no longer had anyone to lean on, so he had to learn to trust himself, to find strength from within and turn the feelings of abandonment into motivation to develop his skills. Every passing day was a battle with the feeling of helplessness, but also an opportunity for him to hone his observation skills, creativity, and comedy techniques. He learned to use laughter as a weapon against loneliness, to turn every dark moment into a chance to connect with the world around him, even if only through the eyes of the audience or the bursts of laughter in a small room. Those family loss experiences were deeply imprinted on Martin Short's soul. But those very experiences also shaped his inner strength. He learned that pain could not be avoided, but the way he faced it would determine his future path. Music and the stage became loyal friends, places where little Martin could entrust all his loneliness, his fears, and his silent tears. From here, a long journey full of challenges, but also filled with creativity began, where every smile, every funny character that Martin created contained a part of a soul that had endured too much loss, but still did not surrender to life. Those tragic childhood years taught Martin Short that art was not just a job, but a spiritual salvation, a place for him to find himself in a chaotic world. Every first step onto the stage, every time he let out a laugh or made the audience burst into laughter, carried a deep meaning. This was how he turned trauma into strength, turned loss into creative energy, and from the darkest days of his childhood, Martin learned how to stand firm with his own talent and will, laying the foundation for a glorious and enduring career that has lasted more than half a century. Martin Short, after those years of childhood marked by loss, began to turn to art as a refuge, a means to transform pain into strength and expression. From the very beginning, he was passionate about learning acting, not just simply learning lines or how to stand on stage, but also exploring mime, physical comedy, skills that helped him turn pain and loneliness into vivid body movements, where every gesture spoke what words could not express. In every rehearsal session in the cramped living room with dim light shining through the window, Martin practiced each movement, each facial expression, each wink, each quirky gesture of Ed Grimley or Jackie Rogers, trying to make the audience laugh but at the same time to make himself feel he could breathe, that he existed. Martin Short, while training, had to support himself, going to school while taking on all kinds of small jobs to pay for rent, buy food, and cover the cost of his classes. Every dollar earned was tied to hardship, and every step forward on stage had to be paid for with sweat, disappointment, and sometimes even criticism from others. This harshness was not only material pressure, but also mental pressure, because Martin understood that if he did not give his absolute effort, opportunities would slip away, and the loneliness from his childhood would surround him again. Through those years, Martin gradually developed his signature characters. Ed Grimley, with his spiky hair, wide eyes, and quirky walk, was an expression of confusion, anxiety, but also humor to the point that viewers had to burst out laughing. Jackie Rogers, with his stiff voice, eccentric actions, and biting humor, reflected Martin's ability to transform experiences of failure, anxiety, and life pressures into art. Each character was born not only for entertainment, but also as a psychological bridge, allowing him to confront loneliness, unhealed wounds, and pressure from the outside world. Tragedy continued to follow Martin's artistic path. He repeatedly failed in auditions, was rejected, was criticized, and sometimes felt that all his efforts were meaningless. The pressure of the stage, the audience, and fierce competition from colleagues forced Martin to learn how to accept failure without collapsing, to learn how to turn pain into creative fuel. Every time he stood on stage, when the lights shone on him and all eyes were on him, Martin felt the weight of expectations, comparisons with other artists, and the fear that if he failed, A part of his childhood memories full of loss would rise again. But that very pain was also the motivation for him to constantly improve himself, to find new humorous touches, new expressions, and ways to convey emotions that were both authentic and funny. Martin learned to control his body, voice, and eyes to turn any experience, sadness, loneliness, fear, into part of a comedy story that the audience could feel. The long hours of practice, the tense auditions, the comedy scenes that were cut or harshly criticized all became painful but valuable lessons that created the Martin Short of today. A complete artist, both refined and full of life, both humorous and emotionally rich. Behind every smile, every quirky gesture of Ed Grimley or Jackie Rogers is a story about pain turned into joy, a testament to an indomitable will in the face of adversity. Martin not only learned to be funny to make the audience laugh, but also learned to be funny to heal himself, to survive in a world that had many times made him feel abandoned and failed. Each failed audition, each public criticism, each unsuccessful scene was an opportunity for him to train himself, to understand that pain is not the end, but fuel for creativity. And it was precisely from those traumas that Martin Short found his own path to become a legend of North American comedy. A person whose every smile contains vitality, resilience, and wounds that have been transformed into living art. Martin Short stepped into Second City Television, where the stage was not only a place to perform, but also a battlefield full of pressure, where every failure was exposed under the lights and the laughter of the audience. There, he began to create the classic characters that later became his own brand. Ed Grimley with his spiky hair and wide, round eyes, Jackie Rogers with his eccentric yet profound humor, each character reflecting in some way the pain, confusion, and loneliness that Martin carried from his childhood. Every day on SCTV was a harsh test of creativity, quick reaction, and the ability to turn pain into humor, because just one line out of rhythm or an expression that did not match, and you would see the audience mocking or colleagues looking with doubtful eyes. Not every sketch was successful. There were times when Martin stood on stage, smiling but with his heart tightening as his performances were cut or his colleagues' reactions were harsh. Sometimes public criticisms that made him feel judged, rejected, and the loneliness from childhood came rushing back like a nameless wave. The pressure from the public, comparisons with other artists, and the expectation to create laughter every night forced Martin to learn how to rise above the fear of failure, to turn pressure into motivation, to turn tears and pain into creative energy. It was in this harsh environment that Martin developed a keen observational ability. Every gesture, every glance, every voice rhythm became material to build characters. He learned to use his body, voice, and rhythm to tell a comedy story while still keeping emotional depth. Each Ed Grimley with his quirky walk or each eccentric Jackie Rogers was a transformation from personal painful experiences into vivid artistic expression. Loneliness, the feeling of rejection, competitive pressure no longer became burdens but fuel for him to create moments full of Martin Short's distinctive humor. CCTV was also where Martin learned to endure the pace of a professional comedian's life, where every rehearsal, every audition, every new sketch was an opportunity to face failure, and every success was an affirmation that childhood pain and current pressure were not meaningless. Here, Martin realized that the audience's laughter was not only joy but also the way he released loneliness and trauma. Proof that art could heal and that pain could be transformed into creativity. The years on SCTV forged Martin Short into a versatile and resilient artist, someone who knew how to use pain as a launchpad, failure as a lesson, and from harsh pressures he created a unique, profound, and energetic comedy style that North American audiences later could not forget. It was precisely at this comedy battlefield that Martin learned that every failure, every doubtful look, every mocking laugh could become fuel to develop observation skills, imagination, and the ability to create laughter that rose above pain, turning every mental wound into a step forward on the path to becoming a comedy legend. CTV was not only the starting point of his career, but also a school of life, where Martin Short learned to stand firm amid pressure, turn loneliness and trauma into a source of creative energy, turned every tragic moment into laughter that made others marvel. And it was from here that one of the greatest comedians in North America was tempered, resilient, and full of vitality as he is today. Martin Short stepped onto Broadway as if entering a completely different world, where stage lights did not only illuminate, but were also harsh to every breath, where every step, every smile, every gesture was scrutinized and judged by thousands of audience and colleague eyes. Every night, he stood before the audience with an invisible but heavy pressure to be perfect, to make every laugh ring at the right rhythm, to make every character the most vivid and alive. The continuous performances, with non-stop intensity, were a challenge to both physical and mental strength. Martin had to learn to control his body, voice, and eyes to convey complex emotions, from humorous to tragic, from naive to profound, all in short moments on stage. That relentless effort was rewarded when he received the Tony Award, the most prestigious award of Broadway, proof of his talent and perseverance in overcoming every challenge. The award was not only a title, but also evidence of the ability to turn pain and trauma into creative strength, recognition from colleagues and audiences who had witnessed the harsh years Martin went through to reach the peak of art. But even when receiving the honor, the pressure did not lessen. Broadway demanded that Martin not only be an excellent actor, but also a multifaceted artist, able to sing, dance, act, and blend humor, while always keeping his mental rhythm at the highest level. During those long days of continuous performances, Martin had to learn to balance personal pain and the spotlight of the stage. The losses from childhood, loneliness, the feeling of abandonment, and mental traumas still frequently rushed back. But on stage, he had to turn them into creative energy. Every time he stepped into the Broadway lights, Martin carried all his painful memories with him, turning them into inspiration to create characters that were both humorous and profound, making the audience not only laugh, but also feel the depth of emotion. Martin Short faced intense competitive pressure on Broadway as well, having to confront other talented artists, harsh criticisms, and the strict standards of the professional world. Every role, every performance, was an opportunity to prove his abilities, but also a risk if he failed. Martin learned to accept risk, learned to turn failure into a lesson, and learned to use pain as motivation to push beyond his own limits. In this process, Martin also developed his ability to observe and connect with the audience, knowing how to sense their reactions, knowing how to adjust his rhythm and expressions to achieve maximum effect. This not only enhanced his acting skills, but also helped him overcome loneliness and loss, because every burst of laughter, every following gaze was a connection, proof of his existence and value. Broadway was not only the place where Martin Short affirmed his talent, but also a school that forged his will and spirit, where he learned how to turn pain into art, learned how to keep his heart and mind always creative even when facing terrible pressure from the profession and life. Every long performance day, every round of applause, every word of praise was a reward for his resilience, evidence of his ability to turn failure, loss, and loneliness into strength to shine on stage, laying the foundation for one of the greatest comedians in North America. Martin Short stepped into the world of Saturday Night Live, where every sketch, even if it lasted only a few minutes, could determine a comedian's reputation. On the SNL stage, there was no room for hesitation. Every line, every gesture, every breath was scrutinized, and the audience, millions of eyes, either live or through television screens, would respond immediately, sometimes with roaring laughter, sometimes with cold silence. Martin's role here was to make a quick impression, turning each short-lived character into an unforgettable mark. making viewers remember forever the distinctive features and vibrant energy he brought. But not every effort was successful. Many sketches failed, were cut, or received harsh public criticism from colleagues and the writing team. Each time that happened, the loneliness and pressure from childhood came rushing back, as Martin recalled the losses and the feeling of abandonment that had followed him since he was young. That difficulty was not only a professional challenge, but also invisible wounds, memories of a lonely childhood, of his mother, of his brother, of his father, and of the fragility of youth having to fight alone. Nevertheless, Martin did not collapse. He learned to accept failure, learned to use pressure as motivation, and learned to use those painful moments as material for creativity. In the harsh SNL environment, Martin focused on developing each character, refining every gesture and tone to create maximum impact in a short time. Ed Grimley, Jackie Rogers, and many other characters were honed through failures, constantly tested, and sometimes met with mixed audience feedback. But it was precisely thanks to this pressure that Martin learned to master the stage, control his energy, and turn every laugh or doubtful look into part of the process of training himself. The pressures from SNL also helped Martin form a resilient spirit and a vital creative ability. When a sketch was criticized or cut, he did not see it as absolute failure, but as an opportunity to learn, adjust, and explore new ways to reach the audience. Martin turned those shocks, criticisms, and public tension into tools to improve his skills, to make each character more vivid and funnier. In this process, Martin also learned to manage his emotions, learned to turn personal pain into creative energy. The losses from childhood, the loneliness, and the feeling of abandonment now became a source of motivation for him to stand firm before the audience, to create humorous moments that were both fun and profound. Every time he stepped onto the SNL stage, he carried all his painful experiences with him, turning them into rhythm, expressions, and gestures, making the audience not only laugh, but also feel the depth of emotion and his real self. SNL was not just a comedy show, but a school of life for Martin Short, where he learned that pressure, failure, and challenges were not enemies but material to build strength and survival skills. Every successful or failed sketch forged his will, and it was from these experiences that Martin became a complete comedian, knowing how to turn pain, failure, and loneliness into creative strength, preparing for bigger challenges in his subsequent film and Broadway career. The years on SNL forged Martin into an artist who knew how to turn tragedy into joy for others, who knew how to turn pressure into material to create vibrant and profound laughter, turning loneliness into connection with the audience. It was from this harsh environment that Martin Short learned that every failure was an opportunity, every pressure was a source of strength, and every pain could become living art, laying the foundation for his great career and unique comedy style that he maintained even at the age of 76. Martin Short, after years of experience on stage and television, met the woman who would stay by his side for the rest of his life, Nancy Dolman, in the late 1970s. Nancy, a graceful and refined artist, quickly became Martin's spiritual anchor, helping him balance the harsh professional pressure and the need for comfort in his personal life. They got married in 1980, and from then on, Martin entered a new phase of his life, where love and family became an indispensable part of the journey he had chosen. Although his career on stage and television continued to demand all his heart and time, Martin always tried to keep his home as a refuge, a place where both could find peace and support each other. The early years of marriage were not always easy. Martin had to face roles that demanded high energy, maintain his unique comedic image, and take care of and nurture their love. Professional pressure was never light, and sometimes both had to compromise, learning to arrange time and emotions to succeed on stage while maintaining family bonds. But Martin understood that family was the place that helped him survive the storms in his career, the place to recharge energy, to see his true value beyond the stage lights. The biggest tragedy in Martin's life occurred in 2010, when Nancy Dolman passed away after battling illness for some time. This loss was a terrible shock, pulling him back to the deep loneliness that his childhood had imprinted. Martin not only lost his life partner, but also lost his strongest spiritual anchor, the person who had always stood by him to share every joy and sorrow. But instead of surrendering to grief, Martin chose to stand firm, to continue living and caring for his family. He became a single father and, at the same time, the spiritual pillar for his children, teaching them about love, resilience, and how to face loss. Martin devoted his entire heart and soul to raising his children while still maintaining his artistic career. He learned to turn pain into motivation, learned to use life experience and personal losses to create depth in his acting, in the comedic and dramatic characters he portrayed. The love for Nancy, even though she was no longer there, still lived in Martin, flowing through every action, every line, every smile on stage, and especially through the way he cared for and bonded with his children. Martin's short story with Nancy Dolman is not just a simple love story, but also proof of responsibility, resilience, and the power of family bonds. Every step on stage, every laugh in front of the audience, carries the memory of his late wife and the responsibility he had to bear for his children. Martin's resilience does not come from physical strength or fame, but from enduring love and the ability to stand firm amid loss, turning pain into strength to live fully and continue inspiring everyone. In the years after the loss, Martin Short became a model of overcoming trauma. He proved that a man could both suffer and continue creating art, both face personal tragedy and inspire audiences. Love and responsibility for his family became a sustainable source of energy, helping Martin not only survive, but also continue to shine, turning losses into spiritual strength, and from there, step by step affirming his position as a legend of North American comedy. After the enormous loss of Nancy Dolman, Martin Short no longer only had to fight on stage or with audiences, but also had to face unrelenting pressures from a career at its peak but constantly changing. Maintaining a humorous image that was always fresh and appealing was not easy. Audiences loved him for his unique characters, like Ed Grimley with his quirky walk, wide eyes, and strange voice, or Jackie Rogers with his eccentric humor mixed with sharpness. But with every new appearance, Martin had to create to keep the appeal and make audiences burst out laughing while keeping himself feeling authentic and not repetitive. Developing new characters was not only an artistic challenge but also an enormous mental pressure. Martin had to maintain freshness in his performance, observe every detail of the audience's reactions, and adjust rhythm and gestures to suit each context. Every sketch had to be both funny and have depth, while demonstrating observational ability and the skill to transform personal experiences into laughter. Continuously creating new characters also put him under pressure to keep innovating, or he would be forgotten in a fiercely competitive comedy market, especially as Martin expanded into the American market, where audiences and producers had higher and stricter standards. The competitive pressure in America was particularly harsh. It was not only facing talented colleagues, but also the pressure to adapt to different culture, humor tastes, and unfamiliar audience preferences. Martin had to learn how to maintain his own style while still making American audiences feel close, happy, and surprised. While doing this, he still carried the mental wounds from the past: childhood loneliness, family losses, the shock of losing his wife, and learned to turn them into creative energy rather than letting them destroy him. Every time he stepped on stage was a time when Martin had to face inner pressure. Painful memories sometimes rushed back, but those very memories helped him understand human emotions more deeply, creating humorous moments that were both fun and profound, making audiences not only laugh, but also move. Martin learned to combine spiritual sensitivity with performance skills, turning pain into vivid material, creating sketches that not only entertained, but also conveyed human experiences authentically. These unrelenting pressures also trained Martin in resilience and absolute discipline. He had to focus, create, experiment, and fail many times before a perfect character or sketch was performed in front of the audience. Failures, criticisms, and doubtful looks no longer made him collapse, but became material to enhance his observational ability, expressive ability, and overall comedy skills. Martin realized that pressure, no matter how harsh, was a necessary condition to form sharpness and sensitivity in art, something that helped him maintain his unique style in an ever-changing comedy industry. It was precisely from these constant pressures that Martin Short learned to adapt and overcome personal pain, turning loneliness and failure into strength, creating vivid, unique, and energetic characters. Every step on stage, every smile, every quirky gesture was proof of the ability to turn trauma into living comedy, showing that art was not only a profession, but also a means to heal himself and connect with audiences. Thanks to this process, Martin gradually became a complete, resilient, and creative artist who could stand firm amid harsh pressure, turn every difficulty into art, and still keep laughter healthy and full of life despite the silent wounds he carried throughout his life. Martin Short, after many years of training on stages in Canada and America, stepped into Hollywood with eyes full of determination, but also full of anxiety, where the glamorous light of the big screen would test every skill and spirit of his. His first film role was in Three Amigos, a small but important opportunity to test himself in the vast and demanding world of film. Next was Inner Space, where he had to prove that his diversity and flexible acting skills could win the hearts of audiences. However, Hollywood was not like the stage Martin was used to. Here, every role, even a small supporting one, could determine a career, and the pressure from audiences and critics was extremely harsh. He had to learn to stand firm against doubtful looks, harsh criticisms, and even skepticism from producers who sometimes had not yet seen his true talent. In this period, Martin went through many failures, roles that were not recognized, scenes that were cut, causing the loneliness and mental wounds from childhood to rush back. Each time he was rejected, he did not see it as absolute failure, but as an opportunity to learn, adjust, and find more effective ways to perform. Competitive pressure came not only from contemporary actors, but also from cultural barriers. When American audiences did not fully understand the subtle humor mixed with quirkiness, and sometimes quirky characters like Ed Grimley were misunderstood or not well received, Martin had to learn to adapt, refresh his style while still keeping his unique comedic identity, both approachable and distinctive. The big breakthrough in his career came with Only Murders in the Building, where Martin, alongside Steve Martin and Selena Gomez, affirmed his ability to maintain screen presence even when he was well over 70. This role not only boosted his fame, but also proved that Martin was not limited by age or previous failures. Every gesture, every humorous expression, every rhythm of dialogue had been honed over decades, and now all converged to create a vivid character that made audiences both laugh and feel moved. This process was not easy at all. Martin had to overcome language barriers, culture, new audience tastes, and expectations from producers and colleagues. Every role was a challenge to prove talent, resilience, and adaptability. Failed auditions, criticisms, or skepticism could not make him collapse. Instead, Martin learned to turn pressure and loneliness into creative energy so that every character he took on contained emotional depth, subtlety, and the life experiences that had forged the person he was. Hollywood is a harsh market, but precisely thanks to those years of nonstop fighting on stage, Martin knew how to keep himself stable, facing professional pressure while maintaining creativity. Every doubtful look, every silent laugh, every difficult comment was turned by him into a vital lesson, forming the foundation to continue developing his film career. Every step on the red carpet, every scene shot whether small or long carried the weight of the challenges Martin had overcome, proving that pain, failure, and pressure could become material to shine, turning Martin Short into an artist who was not only loved but also respected in Hollywood and around the world. Overcoming cultural barriers, Martin proved that the comedy, expressions, and characters he created were not only suitable for Canadian or North American audiences, but also touched the emotions of all those who had ever experienced loss, loneliness, and pressure in life. Through that, he not only affirmed his talent, but also honored the spirit of perseverance and the ability to turn trauma into art. Preparing for the next big challenges in his long and brilliant career, Martin Short entered a phase in his career where his name was no longer confined to Canadian stages or short sketches on SCTV, but had spread widely across North America and the world, marking success on many artistic fronts. He was not only an excellent comedic actor on television, but also a multifaceted artist who shone on Saturday Night Live, where every appearance was proof of his flexibility and sharpness in performance. Broadway became another playground, where Martin had to face the harsh challenges of complex roles while demonstrating his ability to sing, dance, and create unique characters. Those very efforts brought him the Tony Award, the prestigious award recognizing his excellence on the theatrical stage and elevating his image in the arts world. Not stopping there, Martin also received many Emmy Awards and nominations that showed his long-lasting influence on television and his important role in creating classic comedy sketches. Characters like Ed Grimley or Jackie Rogers were not only comedy icons, but also became Martin Short's own identity, remembered and cherished by many generations of audiences. His diverse career and brilliant success across many platforms were proof of his talent, creativity, and resilient ability to face the professional pressure he had experienced since he was a boy in Hamilton, Ontario. However, the road to success was not paved with roses. Martin repeatedly faced failed roles, sketches that were heavily criticized, and pressure from audiences and colleagues. Fame meant that every mistake was scrutinized. Every failure was a mental blow, reminding him of childhood memories full of loneliness and loss. But Martin did not let that defeat him. Instead, he learned to maintain resilience and turn pain into creative material. Every criticism, every doubtful look was used by him as motivation to improve his skills, enrich character depth, and make performances richer. In this process, Martin developed a special ability, keeping humor in pain, turning personal experiences from family losses to professional pressures into profound humorous expressions, making audiences both laugh and feel emotional depth. The characters he created were not only for entertainment, but also reflected in some way his life. The silent pains, the challenges to overcome, and the ability to stand firm against every difficulty. Martin Short's success on many fronts was not only about awards or famous roles, but also a tribute to his will and endurance. He had learned how to combine humor with authentic emotion, how to turn failures and traumas into strength, and how to create a unique comedy style that no other artist could imitate. Thanks to this ability, Martin became an artist with long-lasting influence, not only in the hearts of audiences, but also with the next generations of comedians, serving as a role model for turning pain and professional pressure into vibrant and inspiring art. In every role, every sketch, and every performance on the Broadway stage or small screen, Martin Short showed that true success is not only measured by awards or fame, but also by the ability to overcome pain, maintain artistic identity, and bring joy and laughter to others. This very resilience helped him not only survive personal upheavals, but also become a complete comedy icon, an artist whose every smile carried memories, effort, and the silent wounds that had forged the person he was. After losing his life partner and spiritual pillar for more than 3 decades, Nancy Dolman, Martin Short entered a challenging phase of life where love and responsibility became the only motivation for him to continue living. With becoming a single father, he no longer thought only about his career, roles, or awards, but also had to care for, nurture, and protect his children, ensuring they would grow up in an environment full of love and stability, despite the profound loss the whole family had just experienced. Every day for Martin from then on was a series of small but important decisions, from preparing breakfast for the kids, reading books with them, to words of spiritual encouragement, all expressing the resilience and boundless love he had for his family. Family became the spiritual home where Martin found healing for the silent wounds over many decades. Every smile, every hug, every playful moment with his children was a soothing medicine for childhood pain, loneliness after loss, and the fierce professional pressures that still followed him. In caring for his children and maintaining family stability, Martin found a hidden strength, a reason to stand firm and continue creating. Family was not only a refuge but also an endless source of inspiration, helping him maintain determination and the ability to transform pain into joy, both on stage and in everyday life. In every aspect, Martin showed a spirit of responsibility that rose above pain. He learned to prioritize his children, putting their needs and emotions before any professional pressure. This simultaneously helped him maintain discipline in his personal and artistic life. The hours of practice, scriptwriting, or preparing for roles were balanced so as not to affect his children's mental development and happiness. Through the way he cared for, protected, and loved his family, Martin conveyed a powerful message. Responsibility and love can turn pain into strength, helping people overcome loss and stand firm in life. In this process, Martin also learned that real and consistent presence was the most precious gift he could give his children. Not money, fame, or awards, but the very moments spent with them. The warm hugs, the stories told before bedtime, and the listening when they needed it were what built a solid foundation for his children to step into life. Martin knew that, despite all the upheavals he had gone through, his continued presence and resilience was the only way to inspire through action, helping his children learn the value of patience, strength, and compassion. Family was also where Martin found mental balance after years of facing non-stop professional pressure. When stepping on stage or appearing in front of the camera, he carried confidence, keen observational ability, and non-stop creativity. But after every performance, family was the place to soothe his soul, to recharge energy where the pain from childhood, loneliness, and the loss of his wife was lightened. That very presence and love helped him maintain endurance in his career, turning pressure into creative energy, and at the same time creating a model of inner strength and family responsibility. Every action, every decision to care for his children and keep the family stable was proof of Martin Short's spiritual strength. He did not let pain control him, but used it to create a loving, safe, and inspiring environment, proving that even when life brought the greatest losses, love and responsibility could still make a person more resilient, strong, and humane. And from this very resilience, Martin Short continued to step onto the stage, continued to create, and continued to inspire the whole world with his talent, spirit, and never-ending love. Martin Short, in his journey overcoming loss and loneliness, did not only rely on family, but also found spiritual strength from his close friends, those who had accompanied him through many decades. Among them, Steve Martin became a soulmate, an ally on stage and in personal life, always there when Martin needed spiritual support the most. Along with Steve Martin, Eugene Levy was also a longtime friend who understood Martin from the early days on SCTV and had accompanied him through countless comedy projects, from television sketches to Broadway stages and even feature films. Their presence was not only as friends but also as spiritual partners, as supports that helped Martin overcome the pain from losing his wife and the harsh professional pressures. When Nancy Dolman passed away, the loneliness that seemed like it could swallow Martin was eased because of these strong relationships where he found comfort and empathy. Steve Martin and Eugene Levy not only listened and shared, but also helped Martin see his own value again, see the light in the dark days. They reminisced about happy memories together, practiced sketches together, created new performances together, turning loneliness and grief into creative energy so that Martin would not be pulled into the darkness of loss. The creative collaboration between Martin with Steve Martin and Eugene Levy also became an important part of his career. They developed unique sketches together, experimented with new characters, blended humor with authentic emotion, creating works that not only entertained, but also contained profound human depth. Through each project, Martin learned how to connect emotionally with colleagues, turning professional pressure and loneliness into material for creativity and improving his acting skills. The rehearsals, auditions, or simply exchanging ideas with friends all became an environment for Martin to explore and experiment, helping him maintain his form and uniqueness in every role. Beyond the professional aspect, friendship also brought spiritual peace. In the difficult days after losing his wife, Martin often turned to Steve Martin or Eugene Levy to share his thoughts, loneliness, and worries about his career. Those seemingly simple conversations were precious sources of spiritual energy, helping Martin stand firm, regain confidence in himself, and feel safe in life. They were not just friends, but people who understood Martin's value, respected the pain he carried, and always encouraged him to continue creating and to keep walking on the artistic path he had chosen. The presence of these friends also contributed to forming a sustainable support network, where Martin could relax, experiment, fail, and learn without fear of judgment or loneliness. In that environment, Martin could develop characters, refine sketches, and even try new projects in film, stage, and television, all driven by the spiritual support and empathy from reliable friends. Through all the years full of upheavals and losses, Martin Short learned that success and happiness do not depend only on talent or individual effort, but also on deep and reliable relationships. Steve Martin, Eugene Levy, and other friends were not only colleagues or partners, but solid shoulders for Martin to lean on, sources of inspiration for him to continue creating, and proof that sincere friendship can help a person overcome every pain and turn it into vital strength, helping him stand firm and shine on stage and screen despite the mental wounds he carried from childhood and the losses in his personal life. Martin Short, even though he had moved past his youth full of loneliness and loss, still had to face non-stop tragedies in art and personal life. In his comedy career, professional pressure was always present. Every sketch on SCTV or Saturday Night Live was both an opportunity and a harsh challenge. A failed role or a performance not well received by the audience made Martin have to look at himself, adjust, and learn. The comedy market, especially in America, was extremely demanding, where talented artists had to compete continuously to maintain appeal, where changes in comedy trends, audience tastes, or even one negative criticism could shake a reputation. Martin learned to stand firm against pressure, keep his comedy style both unique and approachable, while maintaining his will and creativity despite temporary failures. But professional pressure was not the only pain Martin had to endure. His life was tied to profound personal tragedies. Losing his wife Nancy Dolman in 2010 was the ultimate shock, when his life partner and spiritual pillar for many decades passed away, leaving Martin with loneliness and the responsibility of raising children alone. He had to learn to balance caring for family, maintaining his career, and healing his own mental wounds. The early days after the loss were long and painful days, when Martin had to face sorrow, responsibility, and emptiness all by himself as a single father. The childhood tragedies still quietly followed him. From losing his mother at 12 years old, losing his brother and father when he had just reached adulthood, these traumas not only created a long-lasting spiritual void, but also became the foundation for Martin to learn resilience, to create joy and comfort from art on his own. Every time he stepped on stage, he performed not only for the audience, but also confronted his own pain, turning it into motivation to perfect his skills, experiment with characters, and create humorous moments full of emotional depth. It was precisely from these tragedies that Martin Short learned how to transform pain into talent and creativity. Ed Grimley, Jackie Rogers, and other characters were not only humorous expressions but also containers for suppressed emotions, places where Martin entrusted sadness, loneliness, and the wounds from childhood. Every quirky gesture, every voice rhythm, or strange look carried a part of his personal experience, making the characters both funny and profound, both entertaining and conveying a message about resilience and the ability to recover from trauma. Those eventful years also trained Martin's ability to endure pressure and face failure without collapsing. When a sketch was criticized or a role was unsuccessful, he did not see it as the end, but as an opportunity to learn, refine his skills, and develop creativity. Every failure became valuable material that helped him train his sensitivity, observational ability, and response to audiences while strengthening his will to overcome the next challenges. Artistic and personal tragedies were closely intertwined in Martin's life, but instead of letting them defeat him, he learned to harmonize pain with creative ability, turning painful experiences into vivid artistic moments. Every time audiences laughed at Ed Grimley or Jackie Rogers, every round of laughter on Broadway or the small screen was proof of the ability to turn tragedy into strength, showing that Martin not only survived the losses, but also rose above himself to create enduring art. It was precisely from these continuous challenges that Martin Short became a complete, resilient, and profound comedian who knew how to keep humor even in pain, who turned loneliness and loss into creative energy, and who always inspired audiences through every gesture, every expression, every smile on stage. Tragedy did not destroy him, but forged a person and an artist whose every role contained vitality, pride, and the silent wounds that had shaped the person Martin Short was. Martin Short, after more than half a century of non-stop dedication, has left a rich and multifaceted artistic legacy that goes beyond the laughter audiences once received. From the early days on CTV, where he created unique and mischievous characters, Martin shaped his own distinctive comedy style that combined physical comedy, mime, and keen observation of human life. On Saturday Night Live, he proved his quick improvisation ability and turned short sketches into classic moments where pain and joy blended in every expression and every line. Broadway was where he affirmed his completeness, showing diverse talent through acting, singing, and dancing, and winning the Tony Award, the prestigious award recognizing his outstanding acting ability. Film roles like Three Amigos, Inner Space, or the recent success with Only Murders in the Building showed that Martin not only existed, but also shone across many platforms, maintaining appeal for many generations of audiences. Martin Short's influence on younger generations of artists is undeniable. Not only was he a role model for creativity and unique comedy skills, but he also inspired the ability to turn personal tragedy into art. The losses from childhood, loneliness, professional pressure, and the shock of losing his wife did not make him collapse. Instead, Martin learned to take every painful experience as creative fuel, making each character, each sketch, and each role carry emotional depth, authenticity, and enduring vitality. Young artists looking at Martin not only learned comedy skills, but also learned how to face challenges with resilience, how to use pain to create lasting value, and how to maintain creativity despite all upheavals. Martin Short's multi-platform and enduring career has made him a living artistic monument, an artist whose name is not only tied to awards, but also to the respect and admiration from colleagues and audiences. The ability to combine humor with human depth, subtle, expressive skills, and the ability to turn trauma into laughter is proof of non-stop creativity, turning Martin into the perfect model of a complete artist. Martin Short's legacy also lies in his comprehensive comedy stature, where he is both an actor, a comedian, and a creator of unique characters. The characters he created not only entertain but also leave a profound cultural imprint, making audiences remember not only the smiles, but also the emotions, the resonance, and the stories hidden behind. CTV, SNL, Broadway, and his film roles all contributed to creating a Martin Short with timeless influence, serving as a model for any artist who wants to pursue a diverse and enduring career. More importantly, Martin Short proved that perseverance and creativity are not only shown on stage or screen, but also in personal life. He overcame family losses, loneliness, and the responsibility of raising children alone to continue dedicating himself to art. This very resilience makes his name not only a comedy icon, but also proof of the indomitable human spirit. The combination of non-stop effort and the ability to turn pain into living value, Martin Short is a living artistic monument. A person whose every smile, every performance, and every character carries the experiences, pain, and pride of a lifetime that has overcome adversity. His legacy is not only the awards, fame, or classic characters, but also the spiritual strength, creative ability, and profound influence on future generations of audiences and artists, making him a great symbol of North American comedy and of art in general. Martin Short, looking back on his entire life journey, is living proof of how a person can turn pain into strength and art, how losses and challenges become fuel that forges talent and will. From the childhood days in Hamilton, Ontario, where loneliness, losing his mother, losing his brother and father, were deeply imprinted on the little boy's soul, Martin learned that existence does not always come from luck or favorable conditions, but from the ability to stand firm on his own, to find his own way out, and to turn trauma into creativity. Those very experiences shaped his keen observational ability, sharpness in expression, and spiritual resilience, factors that became a solid foundation for his entire later career. The years of training on SCTV, Saturday Night Live, and Broadway continued to carve out his ability to turn pressure and failure into opportunity. Every failed sketch, every heavy criticism, every role not well received was a vital lesson, teaching Martin how to observe audiences, understand rhythm and emotion. While maintaining his unique creativity, he did not only create laughter. He turned pain, loneliness, and professional pressure into rich emotional sources, turning comedy characters into an extension of his own life. Through every failure and success, Martin learned that art is not only performing, but also a way of living, a way to connect with others, and a way to release silent wounds. Personal tragedy, especially losing his wife Nancy Dolman, did not make Martin collapse, but became part of the process of growth and development. When he had to raise his children alone, he learned how to balance family responsibility and his artistic career. Family became a source of energy, a place to heal mental wounds, and also where Martin learned the true meaning of love and responsibility. His resilience in personal life became a model for his children, for colleagues, and for audiences. That loss does not define a person, but the way one faces it determines strength and value of each individual. Looking at his career, Martin went through unrelenting pressures: the demanding North American comedy market, competition with talented colleagues, the pressure to maintain a unique style in sketches and characters, and the pressure to keep appeal on stage and screen. From Ed Grimley to Jackie Rogers, every character carried a part of his personal experience, pain and sensitivity, turning it into vibrant comedy that was both fun and profound, making audiences not only laugh but also feel the depth of humanity. This very process forged Martin into a complete artist who knew how to combine humor with emotional depth and became an icon in the North American comedy industry. Martin Short also proved that success is not only measured by fame or awards, but also by the way he overcame pain and inspired those around him. He turned childhood losses, professional pressure, and loneliness into talent, resilience, and creativity, thereby creating a multi-platform career. Television, stage, film, with Emmy Awards, Tony Awards, and widespread recognition. Every smile, every performance of his carried a profound message. Pain can become living material, loss can forge strength, and every person can stand firm, overcome challenges, and create timeless value. Not only an artist, Martin Short is also a symbol of resilience and complete creative ability. A person who shows that even after going through major personal upheavals, one can still find happiness and meaning in family, career, and art. He taught generations of audiences and young artists that difficulties are not the end, but stepping stones, and that laughter, creativity, and love can rise above every loss. Martin Short's life is living proof that art is not only for entertainment, but also for healing, connecting, and inspiring. From the lonely childhood days, through the harsh training years on stage, professional pressures, personal losses, to global success and fame, he turned all those painful experiences into living energy, into strength to create enduring art and profound influence. Martin Short is not only a comedian, but a symbol of vitality, resilience, and non-stop creativity. A person who taught us that pain can become joy, loss can become motivation, and every moment in life can inspire others if we know how to stand firm, laugh, and keep moving forward. The story of Martin Short is a journey full of tragedy and heartbreak, but also filled with inspiration, where every smile on stage carries traces of the silent wounds he has endured. His childhood in Hamilton, Ontario, was not whole when he lost his mother at 12 years old. His brother and father passed away when he had just reached adulthood, leaving a deep loneliness and feeling of abandonment that he had to learn to face on his own. From those days, Martin turned to music and the stage as his only comfort, where pain was transformed into creative energy. The years of training on SCTV, Saturday Night Live, and Broadway are proof of his resilience, even when facing failed sketches, harsh professional pressure, public criticism, and a fiercely competitive market. Martin never gave up, continuously innovating Ed Grimley, Jackie Rogers, and many other classic characters. Personal tragedy did not stop at childhood. Losing his wife Nancy Dolman in 2010 turned Martin into a single father, facing loneliness but still nurturing his children and keeping the family stable. This resilience, combined with the strong friendship with Steve Martin and Eugene Levy, helped him stand firm, turning pain into a source of creativity and inspiring audiences. His roles in Only Murders in the Building prove that even when well over 70, Martin could still shine and keep his art fresh and profound. The lesson that American people can draw from Martin Short's life is failure, loss, and pain do not define a person, but the way we face and transform them determines the strength and value of life. Martin teaches us that even through adversity, each person can still find happiness, creativity, and connection with others, turning pain into joy, responsibility, and meaning, thereby inspiring and giving vitality to the next generation. Before leaving, please hit like and subscribe to the channel to send words of gratitude to Martin Short, the person who has turned pain and loss into unforgettable humorous and emotional moments. Thank you for watching, and see you again in the next video to explore more inspiring stories about resilient and talented people.